What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Unapologetically Black Male, where we talk about surviving the stigmas, standards, and systems. Once again, my name is Dwayne Pate, one half the co-host here, my brother EJ Stewart. I want to give a shout out to him. I want to give a shout out to all of you who continue to join us each and every week. As you all know, this podcast is meant to highlight the stories of African American men and how they had to overcome the standards, the stigmas, and the systems to get there to their respective place in their career. Want to give a special shout out to Jay Pope and Associates, who's been a supporter of our podcast and who really helped us launch this idea and launch this concept, and just continue to promote a positive atmosphere for African American men to share their stories and to be vulnerable enough to share their version of success and what success means to them. We have another great guest on this week, Brother Torin Ellis, and I'm going to turn it over to him for him to give us a little bit of background about himself, and then we're going to kind of jump into these questions that we have tonight.
So I absolutely say thank you for allowing me to be present with your audience. We don't take these opportunities for granted. You know, you trusting my voice, allowing me to be a guest, allowing me to share some observations, some of the realities of what life has been like for me up to this point for 53 years or thereabout, if you will. So to you, Dwayne, and to your co-host, EJ, I absolutely say thank you to each and every person listening. Torin Ellis, diversity strategist, risk mitigator. I show up in the D&I space, or the diversity and inclusion space, different from anyone else that you might know of or be thinking about. And I don't say any of that to impress anyone. It's just that I move differently. I'm a practitioner first and foremost. So I've built a 7-figure recruiting firm, lost it, built it again. I consult with some of the biggest brands on the planet, as well as some of the smallest brands on the planet. I coach executives on how to model good diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And I speak on the same subject, both across the country as well as across the globe. So that's who I am. Looking forward to a rich and riveting conversation.
That's awesome. I'm I've looked into you a little bit, and the part of the activism stands out, and that folks are. Someone said it somewhere. I saw that you should be running for the mayor of Baltimore, but I kind of wanted to dive into knowing who you are and where you come from. Where are you from? Where you call home? What was it like coming up? How did you come up? Tell us who you are.
Yeah, you put a whole lot in there. So let me try to see if I can chop at that tree a couple of times.
My mind's just working. I'm excited.
So I'm gonna try to work my way backwards, and I'll land on the whole mayor piece, which was September of 2015. I remember the article vividly. So let me see if I can go with the beginning. I was born in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, born to two incredible parents at a time where those parents couldn't swim in parts of the Atlantic Ocean. I'm not talking about a community pool. I'm talking about the actual Atlantic Ocean. And what I knew is that my king and queen, that's what I saw them as. My mother and father were like my absolute first, and, just they were the example for me, and again, I say that now looking back. I didn't necessarily know that at 3 years old, 5 years old, 7 years old. But at some point, I started to understand how incredibly important those two individuals are. And so the reason why I sit in the seat that I sit in today and stand on the stages that I stand on and do the things that I did is because I had those two incredible parents that loved me. I had a father who said, I will never tell you that you have to be twice as good. A familiar refrain in Black communities, Black households, telling our children that they have to be twice as good. My father said, I'll never tell you that. I have 4 children. I call my sons kings now, and have never told them or my daughters that they have to be twice as good. Ever. I'll never tell them that. So I was born in South Florida. I grew up across the Midwest. I did my matriculation or short maturation in Davenport, Iowa. I know that gets a good chuckle, a little smile. But let me just say this to you. In 1987, when I went to the Air Force, I was stationed in the Philippines. And I will tell you, there was a dude, I think the cat's name was Kenny Skywalker. I think that was his name. We're talking like 1987, 1988 when I got to the Philippines. And I remember we were sitting at a table at some like little club, and Kenny Skywalker walked in, tall brother. He was a security policeman for the Air Force. And it was a couple of other dudes from Baltimore. And I will tell you, we were sitting at the table. The cats from Baltimore said that they were from Baltimore. This dude said he was from Davenport, Iowa. We all got laughed out of the joint. So I just want you to know, wasn't nobody real fond of Davenport, Iowa, and they wasn't extra fond of Baltimore. But here I am. I love the city. Been here since 1997. I got into recruiting in 1998 or so after building a high-performing team for MCI Communications. I guarantee you there's somebody watching and listening right now who worked at MCI Communications near the airport. I guarantee you. And if they didn't work at the airport, they worked in Hunt Valley. There's probably somebody out there listening right now who worked for me. And they will tell you that I built a high-performing team. We have one of the top 70 teams in the entire country out of 700. So what I will say, EJ, is that because I built such a successful team, I then said, well, if I can hire people for MCI, then let me go hire people for a variety of other companies. And so I started a recruiting company. I had no money. I borrowed $3,000 from my man up in Philadelphia, who's still my man today. It took me 6 months to get my first check. 6. But that first check was 20 stacks. So I knew I was doing the right thing. I knew I just had to stick with it. I knew I just had to stick with it. And so here I am today. And so when we talk about that article, just to bring this to a close, that article was written in September of 2015. And the reason I remember that is because before the article came out, I was sitting in a conference room in Dallas. True story. Blew the room away talking about diversity and inclusion. I'm just giving you the short version. When I get to the airport, my phone is like just going off with text messages, and people are like, congratulations, and saw the thing, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And so a friend of mine called and she said, Torin, there's an article that says you are one of 10 people that should run for mayor, one of which is Wes Moore. I was like, well, show me the article. Send that joint to me. So that's who I am. Yes, the article said that, and I can end on, I will never run for politics.
I had a feeling you might say that.
Ever. I'm just too authentic, too transparent. Can we curse on this thing?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'm gonna try not to, but I'm just because I almost said something. There's no way that I'm gonna deal and do what politicians do. I'm about people and humanity, and I'm just not really. I'm not for all of the fun and games and the shenanigans that they play. So I would never run for politics.
I totally agree. How did you get to this space that you are professionally? Like, I know was your first job, in this line of work? How did you get from South Florida to the Air Force to where you are now? Like, what sparked your drive and passion to want to be where you are in this diversity world?
Yeah, I try to tell young folks today, don't play around. Like, you don't have to go to college to be successful. I don't have a college degree, but I had a plan, and my plan was always to be about the business. I've been working since I was, 9 or 10 years old, cutting grass, flipping newspaper, scooping ice creams when everybody was laughing at me in high school because I had on that pink Baskin Robbins 31 flavor shirt. I'm in that joint scooping ice cream. Folks laughing. I'm making money. So I when I was growing up in Davenport, the clothesline that we hang our clothes on in the backyard, I would wrap the clothesline around my stomach, run and tie the ends to the lawnmower, and then I'd hop on my 10-speed and I'd drag that lawnmower to houses across the neighborhood in the area because my father worked for Sears and Roebuck, and he put a note up on the cafeteria thing, and he said, my son will cut your grass no matter where you are for $7. So I had to make sure that I went and cut that grass for $7. I had to get there, and he wasn't taking me in a vehicle. I'm dragging my lawnmower behind my 10-speed. So how did I get here? Because I put my nose down and I work. You know, I'm about that work. And right now I look at the outlets that young people have in terms of social media, and all of the things that they can do. Man, I'm always telling my kings and my princesses, you don't have to be a consumer. I need you to be a creator. I don't need you to be a customer. I need you to be the person who's, you know, in charge of whatever it is. And it doesn't have to be, you know, some rocket ship type solution. I just want you to be entrepreneurial in how you think. I'm not even saying you got to be an entrepreneur. I need you to be entrepreneurial in how you think. So how did I get here? I got here because I built a team at MCI and I said, you know, this is all right. And so I built a 7-figure recruiting company in like 18 months, lost everything when the bubble burst in 2001, worked hard to start to rebuild it again, lost everything in 2008. And what I said to myself in 08 was, do I want to do this again? You know, do I want to build a recruiting company again? Because it's hard work to find EJ, to convince him to talk to my client, go on the interview, everybody like one another, and then you get a check, and I only get a check if EJ takes the job. And then I can only keep the check if you stay there for a certain period of time. So yeah, we can make big money, but there was always a lot of risk associated with it. Like EJ could go on the interview, but EJ is also interviewing with 5 other people. And EJ is going to make the decision that works for him. So I can put all this work in. I can help him with his resume. I can coach him through his interviewing. I can work real hard to make my client believe that he's the best person. But that doesn't mean that the deal is going to be sealed. So I just didn't know after 2008 that I wanted to do that again. And what I really, really wanted was to be more of a trusted partner. So now executives call me, they text me. You know, I got another phone, they text me. Like they are like, look, we don't know what we should say in this instance. Or here's a scenario that's happened inside of the organization. How would you address it? Or we did say something, didn't necessarily land well. How do we fix it? Or it's just a matter of, case in point, today, had a phone call and the person said, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said, he said, first and foremost, I just want you to know that I'm 1000% for diversity and inclusion. Like I'm for it, but my Christian beliefs make it hard for me to celebrate the LGBTQ community. I said, thank you for being transparent. I appreciate your rapport building and trust with me, feeling comfortable enough to share that. I need you to elaborate. What does celebrate mean to you? He said, if the company participates in a pride parade or some pride event in the city and they wanted me to go, I'd have a hard time going because it's against my Christian belief. And that was a 35, 38-minute coaching session and call of how to show up with grace, make space, be humble. And EJ and Dwayne, what I tell people is in this D&I space, 4 words are extremely important: empathy, intentionality, proximity, and transparency. And so in this instance, I said, I need you to be more proximate with the LGBTQ community. And that doesn't mean that you need to get close to a person, but you need to get close to the information, articles, blog posts, white papers, podcasts, documentaries, history. I need you to get proximate with the community so that you do understand, while you may not agree and celebrating with confetti and pom-poms is hard for you, I can make space. And that's how we left it. So I got to this place because I just wanted to be more of a trusted partner. And like I said, my voice is trusted all across the globe.
Awesome. That's awesome. I want to do 2 questions. I want to go back to like growing up with your dad in the house, because so often, you know, we hear dads not being in the house, and like that story of putting the message up on the cafeteria that you'll cut anybody grass, like that's a different level. That's a different level of parenting there. So tell us about your dad. Tell us about that experience, just kind of growing up with a strong father like that.
Yeah, my father, the reason, first of all, my mom is from, of course, South Florida. My father was from Toledo, Ohio, and they met at St. Augustine University down in Raleigh, North Carolina. And my mom had me when she was 18. So she dropped out of school, had me, and then she came back to finish school. And then she and my father got together, got married, and they ended up moving to Toledo, Ohio, which is how I moved when I was 3 from Fort Lauderdale up to the Midwest. What I will tell you is that the both of them worked extremely hard. I often refer to my mom now as, she was the prototype. By the time she was 30, she had 3 children, was working a job and a half at minimum, sometimes 3 jobs. My father was growing in his role and responsibility at Sears and Roebuck. There is a diversity and inclusion history and slant to Sears and Roebuck. We don't have to get there yet, but he was growing in his career at Sears and Roebuck. So every time we moved from Toledo to Columbus to Fort Wayne, Indiana, to Davenport, Iowa, every time we moved, he was closer to becoming, the manager of the store or regional director. I don't know all the titles, but that's what he was doing. So that's the reason why we were moving. He was chasing that corporate dream. And when that corporate dream didn't manifest, it triggered, my father was, he was bipolar and an alcoholic. So it was at times a nasty combination, and he wasn't physical or abusive in any way, but it was one of those things where you were like, I don't know what frequency he on tonight, but we're going to let him like do what it is that he does. Hereditary, because his father was an alcoholic. I remember, as a child going to visit, my grandparents and rarely ever seeing my grandfather because he was always in the room drinking. He never really bonded with any of us, my cousins, my siblings, none of that. So my father and my mother worked extremely hard. Every time we moved, it was for something better. And when that something better didn't happen, he just spiraled. And that spiral caused he and my mother to get a divorce at 18, when I was 17 or 17, I think. Yeah, I think they got a divorce when I was like 16 or 17. 16, because the last year and a half of school, I actually lived by myself. My mom went to and got another house across town in Davenport, Iowa. My father took a job in another city, like an hour and a half away, and they didn't uproot me. So I lived at home by myself and went to school. My senior year, I went to school by myself. So, that's what it was. Typical household, but I shouldn't say typical. I shouldn't say that. My household. It was my household. And, if I look back on it right now, Dwayne, I would absolutely say that the love that they had for myself and my sisters was incredible. They gave us all that they could give us. They positioned us as best as they thought that they could position us. And, here we are now. All 3 of us are reasonably successful.
What impact would you say that experience of then living on your own and going through and witnessing that split and that spiral that you spoke of, what impact did that have on you now as a parent?
I have 4 children. I went to the Air Force in February of 1987. I never walked across the stage, so I didn't get my diploma, never wore a cap and gown. I was already gone to the Air Force. Because of my birthday, they held me back. And really, my last year of school, I probably had like 2 classes. So literally, I could go to school at 7 or 8 in the morning, and by 10, I'm done. So I'm working. And then in February, or, when you take that Christmas break in like December or January, everybody else had to go back to school, I was done. So December, we take off for Christmas break. February 1st, I'm in San Antonio, Texas, enrolled in the Air Force. And so I share that because my first child was through my time in the military. And the mother was in the Philippines, gave birth in the Philippines. I'm here in the U.S. when that birth took place. So the only way that I was able to keep tabs on everything that happened is my dear friend, I will say his name, Mike Hill, who used to be on ESPN, who used to be Fox Sports 1, married right now to a pretty famous housewife, if you will. That's my man. And he and I were stationed together in the Philippines, and he was like, don't worry, I got you. I'm going to keep you posted and everything. Here's the piece. I didn't meet my daughter until she was 20. But the reason why that's important is because I told my then fiance, now wife, I was like, look, I need you to understand, I'm not a statistic. So at a point, I am going to find my daughter. And that's exactly what I did. And so the impact that my parents had on me was you be responsible. I think we got too many brothers running around this joint that ain't trying to be responsible. I ain't say you got to be perfect. Right. I am very particular in my word. They ain't responsible. And I really have zero time for cats that ain't responsible. You out this joint freaking and doing the things that you want to do, making babies, and don't want to take care of your baby, don't want to take care of your children. You arguing about child support? What? That is infuriating to me. We worried about the white man and, you know, they ain't letting me move up in corporate America. They holding me down. Nah. We got to be better about taking care of our children and protecting family, some definition of family. And trust me, the moment we do that, the rest of the stuff is going to fall in place. They can't mess with us when we are accountable and responsible. We might be sidetracked. We might have a couple of hurdles we need to navigate, put some shoulders on a couple of walls. Dang, that hurt. Back up, do it again. But when we are focused, accountable, responsible, we unstoppable. And I just feel like too many young brothers, and sad to say, too many older brothers, mature brothers are missing that point. And until we get that frequency right, we're going to always be sitting around looking and lamenting about a lack of money and poverty, wealth gaps and healthcare disparities and all of the other things that we could talk about if we wanted to have that type of conversation.
Absolutely. What were some things in this journey of, you know, building the MCI, building your enterprise? What were the challenges, the stigmas, the roadblocks, the glass ceilings? Were there any that were placed in your way to get there, and what was that like?
I'm gonna give you a positive and a negative, if you will. The positive side of the game was, I said earlier in the conversation that I don't have a college degree, but I'm smart. So when I went to the Air Force, I tested into a top secret job or role. I forget what we call them, AFSC or something like that.
You know about aliens.
Something close to that. Has something to do with stuff in the air. Absolutely. And so what I say to folks is that I think I'm where I am now in large part because I know how to communicate. You know, I know how to communicate verbally. I know how to communicate in writing. I know how to communicate even in silence. You know, I know how to move into a room silent and folks is like, who's that cat right there? Or without making a scene. You know, the attention it doesn't have to be on me. I might be the keynote speaker, but the attention doesn't have to be on me. I know how to move in silence and still, I just know how to communicate. And I think that is so incredibly important. Everything that I've done professionally has been built on communication. When you build in a sales team, you got to communicate. What's the opportunity? What's the strengths? What's the weaknesses of the person you are looking to hire? You got to develop them. You got to inspire them. You got to motivate them. As a leader, you got to move impediments and challenges out of the way, provide them with the resources and the platform so that they can continue to grow their career. You got to encourage them to go after more. As a leader, you got to promote them. You can't keep people close because you're scared that they're going to leave you. I was famous for promoting people inside of MCI. So the positive side of the game for me was I got strong communication skills. The negative side was I left corporate America because, given all that I've told you, my boss said, I can't trust a black man with hair on his face.
Whoa.
I ain't lying.
Whoa.
And so I said to myself, wait a minute. I'm running like a $30 million business. You know, to some folks, that may not be a lot of money, but I'm doing about $30 million a year with my team. That's a problem. Everybody in the building knew who I was because in the morning I would run through, what's up, Dwayne? How you doing, EJ? Hey, so-and-so. Boom, just walk behind them. Quick, nothing heavy. I ain't stopped. Just tap them on the back. Everybody got their headphones on at MCI. Just acknowledging people. Everybody knew who I was. And for him to come through and say he couldn't trust a black man with hair on his face, it just showed me how disposable I was to him. And I said that at that point, I am going to make sure I control how I move in corporate America. And I walked away from MCI at 30 and I've never looked back.
Wow. That's wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's great. So would you say that kind of sparked you into wanting to get into diversity inclusion? Or
nope, not at all. Not at all. That wasn't it. That the only spark that was I'm going to control my destiny.
Gotcha. Right.
And I knew that, you know, I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't know how to write a business plan. Didn't even think about writing a business plan. All I did was I called my boy up in Philly. I said, look, I need to borrow $3,000. I went and bought one of them big Dell laptop computers.
Mm-hmm.
I bought a $18 or $20 table from IKEA, a little garbage can, a little clock on the wall, and I had a phone book. And literally, I would get up in the morning, 2, 3, 4 in the morning. I would call. And at that time, you had the VRUs, and I would figure out if I dial, 444-1212, what's the extensions? I'll try 0000. Okay, that didn't work. 0001. Okay, that didn't work. 0102. Boom. And it got me Dwayne. Oh, okay, 0102 work. Let me do 0103. Boom. Got me EJ. So now I'm in people's voicemails at 2, 3, 4 in the morning. I ain't lying to you. 2, 3, 4 in the morning, I'm dropping voicemails for salespeople all across the country. 11 o'clock, I was at Cheesecake Factory down at the harbor waiting for my phone to ring. So I put my work in from 2, 3, 4 in the morning till 10, go down to the harbor, have lunch, phone start ringing. Boom, I'm setting up interviews in the afternoon. And that's what it was. What got me into diversity, Dwayne, was, I'm recruiting people that are making $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year. And when I'm looking at the teams that these people are going to, they didn't have any representation. So I'm saying to myself, why is it that these folks can't find? Now, don't get me wrong. I didn't only place underrepresented, underestimated talent. I wasn't, exclusive in my recruiting. I would just recruit. So it could be a white guy. It might be a white woman, a black man, a black woman, Hispanic woman, Latino woman, Latin man. It might be a variety of people. It just so matter, just whoever was answering that phone. I'm telling you what I was doing. But at a point, you start to recognize there's no representation, and the higher up in terms of responsibility and compensation, even less representation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me go in and be a consultant. I said I wanted to be trusted. Let me go in and be a consultant and teach them how to build recruiting teams that know how to find a variety of talented individuals. So it started through me just doing transactional recruiting, recognizing that there was a lack of representation around 2011. There was another reason why I got into diversity and inclusion, but the first piece was recognition. The second reason, and probably the bigger reason why I got into diversity and inclusion, and this is public. You know, there's a YouTube presentation out called Shortcuts that I did with Lamar Shields. We did this in December of 2019. I'm in the Reginald Lewis Museum telling this story in 10 minutes. I'll tell it to you in 30 seconds. I called a white woman, told her that I was looking for a person that did the same type of work she did. And that white woman was in Delaware. I said, I'm trying to recruit a person just like you down in DC. If you know anyone through your LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever, I'd really welcome an introduction. And long story short, that white woman got fired. She called my client and said that she would apply for the job in DC, but that she knew that they were going to turn her down because she wasn't Black, because she talked to the recruiter, and I'm going to file a EEOC complaint against you. And so the client cut me because they were like, you know, we can't work with you if we got litigation or pending litigation. Here's the kicker. That client was a $10 million client. 2011. So all I can tell you is that in that moment, what I said was, I am going to research everything that I can get my hands on around diversity and inclusion, policy, procedure, legislation, affirmative action, EEOC. I'm gonna research all of that. And when if I stay in the people space, this is where I'm going to focus. So it was leaving corporate America, recognizing the lack of representation, and that event in 2011 that cost me several $1 million. I was like, that's it. That's how I got here.
Wow. Wow. From one person.
So when you see activists, there's a reason why I don't play around.
I was going to ask you to dive into that, you know, aspect of your life, the activism, and in connection back to the article. Totally understandable about how you feel about politics, especially in, you know, one of our large East Coast cities. Tell us about the activist piece and how that is connected. Why someone, or why you were nominated, or you know, said to be someone who should run for mayor. And if there is any connection.
Yeah, I don't even know why I was nominated. You know, the person who wrote the article apparently had been tracking me online, watching some of the things that I may have been doing through social media. But the activism for me is it has been, how do we find a way to give voice to those who don't necessarily know how to use their own? And so if you Googled me right now, you'd see that I used to do something called Method 1518 here in the city. And I'm gonna get the dates messed up, but you know, I did Method 1518 probably from 2003 or 4, something like that, to like 2006 or 7. And really what I was doing with Method 1518 was taking high school seniors, bringing them out to Towson University. Shout out to Towson University. And I'm shouting out Towson University because Morgan State and every other school that I reached out to wouldn't give me the space. Towson University gave me the space. We would bring seniors out and we would talk about the power of technology, what technology was going to do to disrupt the things that they were thinking about, how it was going to create job opportunities, tried to work hard at getting them internships, had a basketball tournament where I didn't give away trophies. I gave away Palm Pilots, if you remember them. I hooked them up with internships. So I've always been around how do I make sure that these folks that they often called at-risk youth, which is another phrase that got deeply up under my skin. At risk of what? Like the young people today are no different than the young people of the 80s, no different than the young people of the 70s and the 60s. They are a product of their time, period. So they're not at risk. We just need to put our arms around them. And those that want our arms to stay around them and support and help them, they will gravitate towards that. You got some folks out there that don't care. And trust me, I ain't really going to spend a whole bunch of time chasing your son or daughter who doesn't care. I'm not doing that. But if you are in front of me and you're like, look, pour into me, help me, develop me, then I'm all for that. Like, I'm going to give you everything that I have. So I just spent so much time trying to focus on how do you help people that don't have a voice? How do I get these young people from Baltimore internships in technology so that when they graduate from high school, should they choose not to go to college, they'll have their hand in a sense of creativity on something different. It doesn't have to be fast food or, I don't know, whatever. Just, I wanted them to see something different. So when you talk about, the connection and why being an activist and all of that, it's always been about, how do you exercise your voice? I'm not afraid of, I'm just not afraid of the power structures. I'm not afraid of the system. I'm here to fight. And that doesn't mean that I'm trying to cause ruckus but if it requires for me to dismantle some things, disrupt some things, then that's what it's going to be. But I just don't think that we can afford to sit in silence and just lament and complain.
Be a part of status quo.
Complicit in our own demise.
Absolutely.
This has been heavy but needed. To be honest, because it just kind of really speaks to the will and really our desire to want to win. And I think for so many times, we allow society to kind of impose their views on us, and it puts a glass ceiling to us when we were created to do much more than that. But we got to believe in ourselves, and I think that's where it really starts. And I think you've had that experience of just kind of having to believe in yourself and really kind of step out there on your own and not being afraid to not being afraid to fail, but not being afraid to build over if you need to. And I think that's very pivotal to our success as men per se, and individually.
And let me just add, a little bit of a footnote in there. 2001, the bubble burst.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody out there listening knows it was a tough time. I had a number of clients that owed me money to the tune of like $370,000. I can't remember the number, but that money was never realized. So I filed bankruptcy in 2004. Now, I didn't use that as a moment to run back to corporate America. I was like, I'm out here. I'm fighting. So I fought through it. Now, mind you, I had a spouse that was working, but trust, she wasn't making bank in 2004.
Mm-hmm. And that takes a lot of trust to say you got it, and on both parts to say, I trust your vision that you're gonna get back, and I trust that you're gonna let me do this and not beat me up about it every night. You know what I mean? That takes a lot of trust.
I just believe in me. I firmly believe in me. And I try when I show up to make sure that I emit the type of energy that the person in front of me feels like, yo, I need to believe in me too.
Mm-hmm.
And even though that's not the conversation we're having, I'm doing things to uplift them, to amplify them. I want to know what they're doing. Like, I've talked more tonight than I would normally talk. I'm an introvert, honestly. So when you hear me say I speak and coach and all these things, I really am an introvert. I shut down and just like spend a lot of time with myself and reading and researching. But when I'm in the company of other people, I'm really trying to see how can I amplify you? How can I help you? How can I lift you up, whatever it is that you are doing? There's a group that I support, Lee Cancer Research Foundation. I'm doing this shout out, because I support her. So every single time I hit a microphone for paid engagement, no matter where I am, I have the host of that event send her a check. Mm-hmm. Beautiful sister, Dr. Hadia Green, Lee Cancer Research Foundation. And the reason I do that is because it takes about $10 million to bring your solution to trials. Mm-hmm. So she's got a solution to cure or to at least treat cancer, but she can't even get it to the FDA trial stage. And I may be wrong when I say FDA, so please forgive me. Anybody out there, that knows a thing, don't hold it against me. But it takes $10 million to get there. And when I heard Dr. Green on SiriusXM 3 years ago, she said she has sat in a number of meetings. And they told her straight up, if you were a white man, you would have been had the money. Mm-hmm. So I said, ain't no need for me to just hear the information and do nothing with it. Take action. What can you do? I can tell you what I can do. Every time I speak, send her a check. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what I do.
Well, I think I speak for Dwayne, and myself. Every time we do this show, a brother that comes in front of us gives us something, and definitely that was the case for me tonight. And we want to give you your flowers to tell you that we thank you for continuing to be unapologetically you, the Black man that you are, and overcoming the things that you've overcome and continuing to fight that fight and breaking society's systems and stigmas and not being a part of the status quo. So, from us to you, we thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. I do have there's two questions I want to part with. And for those who are maybe watching and really don't have a because I like to break it down for people who don't really have an understanding of what diversity and inclusion is. Can you guys summarize that? And then after that, I want you to give like some parting words to someone who may be listening to encourage them in their journey.
Yeah. So for me, diversity and inclusion is about not being afraid to convene the unfamiliar, the unusual, and the unsuspected, all in effort to achieve a common goal or objective. Said another way, allowing for different individuals to be a part of the organization, not using stereotypes, prejudices, biases to prevent talented individuals from joining high-performing teams, thriving organizations. I just want difference to be a part of the solution. So diversity and inclusion is more than just Black men, Black women, or gender and race. Diversity and inclusion is socioeconomic, it's academic, it's geographical, it's political, it's religious. It's a variety of things. And do not get me wrong, I am not minimizing the importance, the criticality of gender and race. Mm-hmm. Given the fact that I'm a Black man, I absolutely know what we are up against in terms of gender and race trying to get into some of these organizations. But I am stressing that diversity is multidimensional. Inclusion is multidimensional. And my parting words are pretty simple. Bad will be the day for any man or woman when they become absolutely contented with the thoughts that they are thinking, the deeds that they are doing, the life that they are living, when forever beating at their soul is some great desire to do something more, to be more, to give more, because after all, they are a child of the Most High God. I am simply saying to every person listening, my favorite equation is P minus I equals R. Potential minus interference equals results. Strive for the results.
And on that note, we're going to close out. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Unapologetically Black Male, where we talk about surviving the stigma, standards, and systems. Once again, you can follow us on all social media outlets. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe to our YouTube channel so that we can continue to promote this positivity and continue to promote African-American men's story and their view of success and how they overcame all the different trials and tribulations that they had to go through to get to where they are. Once again, Brother Torin, we want to thank you again for joining us and just kind of sharing your life and sharing your story, and definitely look forward to connecting with you in the future on more events.